Welcome everyone. This is our final project in our painting class, dealing with objects that we find around the home and being able to utilize that. I've kind of combined some different ideas for this last project as I was coming along. I wanted to do something with repetition. I was thinking about values, and I was thinking about surface and a lot of different things. But this one I think should be pretty good. These are some of the items we need. I got a whole stack of stuff here. Probably going to need some scissors at some point in time in this assignment. You will need probably some glue. With that, glue stick, something will work along those lines for us as well. You'll need paints and a paintbrush with those sort of things. Surfaces to paint on. I have just some paper here. This is just type paper or printer paper, as it were, that we're going to put some paints on. This is similar to, like I said, some of the projects we've done in the past. Hey, look, more paper towels. That's kind of another deal that we're going to have. I have paper towels just taped down to a surface and ready to go. And then you're also going to need, this is my final actually display piece. This is a piece of cardboard I just cut out that is 15 inches by 12 inches. I figured that would be big enough to be able to support the things that I'm going to be doing with this project. But you'll need some sort of a stiff surface, a stiff cardboard to attach your smaller pieces to as well. We're going to be dealing with repetition as well, repeated forms. We know the repetition is one of the main keys that an artist has to create a sense of unity in his artwork. That's a principle of art. So the repetition and unity are principles of art that you have and you try to create in your artwork. And so let's kind of jump into it and get some of the preliminary stages done with. This will probably be a two-parter for us. And take time to assemble. All in all, I'm anticipating this is going to be it's going to be a multi-day project. You're going to have a couple of days to do it. As such, like the last one, you're going to have more points available to you on those. Let's jump in. So paper towel. I'm just going to take, I was really kind of interested in some of the things that happened with these paper towels. Actually, when I took my brush and I just kind of dried, you know, I was painting something, you know, then I needed to clean off my brush, and it had some stuff in it, and then it made these kind of interesting designs on it. So I said, well, let's utilize that idea or that concept and go ahead and create this background. It's a very soft sort of a background that we're creating with this, and I'm just picking colors at random from my tray as we put them in there. And you'll notice that if we use enough water in there as we start to put the paint on the paper towel, it'll just spread, you know, on that, which is what we want. I want this kind of cloudy effect. And what's another good color? We need some green. Some green in there. That's some good stuff. And you can pre-wet some of the stuff if you want. You can just kind of go as it's happening there. Ooh, what's that? That looks like a black. I want a purple. Where'd my purple go? There's some purple. I'll say. I don't think it's going to work as well if you do dry brush stuff. What do I mean by dry brush on this one? Dry brush is this. Let's see, I've got to get some more purple. I'm going to set this over here. If I go like this, you notice here where it's dry, right along the edge. It's not wet. It's not dissolving as much. So we want it to dissolve in there with the water and have that move around a little bit. So I'm not as interested in the dry brush sort of a thing. If I initially put some pieces on, I'll come back in, hit it with some water so it'll spread around, and we'll just continue on with this thing, and eventually we'll fill in the whole area with paint, and you'll have this dissolvey, cloudy, sort of a look to things. This is just some water. You can kind of tell when I hit the water. Let's see, what's another? Oh, this one down here. This is some stuff. This blue is like serious. That's some serious blue. That was yellow, huh? Remember I told you cleaning your brush? Well, didn't really get all the blue off of the brush, so I ended up with some green. Good thing green will work for us as well. I guess mixing colors is not a bad thing. There's some of that yellow we wanted. Okay. Let's see, rinse off your brush. That's a good deal. And the goal, I'm looking for just a working surface. I'm going to do some other things with these, with the paper towels and that sort of thing, and just going to fill in the entire surface. Then we're going to let the thing dry. I'm going to move this off to the side. I think you got the idea of what I'm looking for. That. Oh, here's another thing that happens. When it starts to dry, notice how the blue started to get a little bit lighter there. I can come back in here and still just kind of dab some stuff in here. And have that dissolve in as well. So that's kind of a thing. Okay, so I'm going to fill this whole thing, and then I'm going to let it dry and for the next stage. So let's move that out of the way. And I need this one right here. This was my this was just the regular type paper. And what I really need in this one is I need a dark on that one. If you have like a black paper or something like that, you could make that work as well. The grays will work. You remember we did when we were doing the initial cut paper or torn paper sort of a thing. We had stacked things, and we were kind of preparing some of this stuff for layering as well with those. Okay, and I don't really need a ton of the black. For my purposes here. You may need more with that depending on how things are going, but we want a good dark color. It doesn't even necessarily need to be fill in the whole thing. You just need as much as you need. I need enough to make some birds on those, and it's up to you. You're going to have some choices in the items that you're putting into your project. It doesn't have to be specifically the same pieces that I'm doing with those, but that's probably plenty enough black paper for me to be utilizing on that one. So I can take that one and I can let it dry. Now, depending on what you're doing, you may have some other needs as far as that goes. But that should be it. So we prepared our papers for the next step. Let me move that off to the side. So let's move this back in. This is one that I created earlier because I knew that it's going to be a multi-staged process. Remember, drying time with watercolor paints is always a deal. It always takes time to do that. And so that's why this is going to be a multi-stage project and a multi-day project. Maybe you do the paper, you paint the paper the first day, and then you can let it dry, and then you do all the cutout stuff and the gluing down. You do that the second day on that, and that's perfectly all right. That's what the plan is for those. So we have our paper ready to go, and I need 12 torn pieces of stuff, and so I'm just gonna rip it. And they don't have to be a specific shape on those. I don't know if I wanted the sharper edges on those, but and I'm thinking that the papers, as you tear them, there probably don't need to be more than 2 inches or so. And let's get some of this stuff. I guess you could use either side of the paper depending on what your thoughts are with those. And if you're looking to have it more ordered, maybe that's the deal. Maybe we do something like that, where I have this over there, the top edge is like that, this one is over here, this one was a corner piece, so that they're like that. Maybe that's the deal. More paper. That one was a little thin. Okay. So I need 12 pieces. And let me get my corner pieces on here. I may find I need to make them just a little smaller, but this will do. I think I kind of like that idea, to where you have those pieces in that. Look, I have some spills of water I can clean up. Okay, so I'm going to have these different sections that I'm going to put down on my cardboard, and so that should be enough for me to utilize on that one. So now comes part of the gluing. It's probably easier to glue some of these pieces in here, and I decided I'm going to use one of my favorites that I've apparently used across the thing here was our birds. I wanted silhouettes of something, and so this was I was going to utilize the birds, and so I've already have some paper. Where's my scissors again? And you may have remembered when I was cutting out birds that you take and you cut a diagonal piece like that, set over there to the side, and then maybe a diagonal piece like that. This looks to be a little long, but we're going to take and we're going to put our birdies onto the squares on those. And so these are going to be an arrangement of the birds, and they're not going to be identical. I'm not looking for them to be identical on their application, but they're going to be in our little squares here. So let me bring in some glue. The nice thing about these, if what you're doing is a little bit longer, then you can hold on to it, and then when you want to put some glue on it, it's easier to hold, easier to manipulate. Now if the glue wants to come out, there we go, there we go. All right. And so this time, this bird's going to be flying in this way. And I just need enough to hold him here. It doesn't have to be over the whole surface on that. And a little bit of glue on that one. Okay, so I got one bird glued down in one of my squares, and I'm going to glue birds down all over on that one. So here's another example. This is my test one over here. So I have birds of different sizes, different shapes, flying in different directions, doing sorts of different things like that. And so those are my cutouts of my birds. Now, here's some other ideas that I thought of, that if you wanted to work through those, is I thought you could do something like trees. Just cut slivers of paper down. If you're trying to do a tree, for example, let's do a tree. I'm going to pop this guy over here. There's my extra piece. And I have pre-sliced a little bit of sticks here. So here's just a thin slice of a stick type of a thing. And this is another real easy one too, because it has longer pieces. You can hold one end and then just glue another down on those. And picking up the pieces of paper is the hardest part. Here's another one. And then you just assemble on these random little different shapes of trees. You put down the stem, then you start putting down some branches. Like I said, this is kind of a stick sort of a thing, so as you put your pieces on, you can hold one end and glue the other. And these are just little slivers of, like I said, of black. And so you could have a series of little trees on that. Boom, 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 over the whole thing as a possibility. And these are just a few ideas that I had come up with. You're welcome to come up with some other ideas as well. Here's another idea for little things. Maybe a little house. You cut out little house shapes and then glue down the little pieces of the windows and the doors on that. So let's say we have this guy over here. Let's bring my pieces back into play down here. And there it is. Okay, so just come in once again, gluing the little house down. And picking up these pieces. This is a little harder when you're doing these ones because this one has a little bit of glue there. I just wanted some white. This is harder because I need to get this in more of a precise place, and so I gotta put that in a little bit, kind of like that. Okay, now there we go. There's the window, and a little bit of glue, a little bit of fingernails here, if I can get that. And I can take around and I can use a pencil, an X-Acto knife, a toothpick or something like that. If it's not quite right, not quite square, I can twist it and turn it a little bit. So I have a little houses. So I may have a series of houses in these 12 spots that I'm dealing with. And that's kind of up to you. The doors can go on different sides and stuff. Now if you have another idea that you would like to use, you can definitely utilize that as well for your construction on what you want to do. The main idea is what I want to be able to have the silhouettes on these pieces ready to go and just glued down into place. From there, let's bring this guy back on. Gotta move a few things out of the way. Okay, from there I'm going to just arrange these in and on the board, and eventually is going to glue them down. I'm looking to have them somewhat equally spaced. Now I'm choosing on this one to go more of a horizontal view on those. You're welcome to make it more vertical, so more up and down. I'm just going to get these into place first. I guess I need that one. I think that one went over here. And okay, so I now have these guys on here on my board, and what I'm looking for is to line them up so they're kind of equal distance along the way here. So I'm going to set these corners in first, and then the outside, kind of like building a puzzle, right? You start with your outside edges first, and then you space things more towards the inside, and that can go kind of like that. And now I'm just going to make sure, so I have my edges are clean around the side. These ones just need to be in here, and I'm okay with them being loose. I actually thought it would be better to have some three-dimensional qualities to them. Okay, so I'm going to glue these pieces down, sort of. I find that the Elmer's glue works out pretty good for this because it'll where it contacts, it's going to glue down pretty good with those. And then just have that placed. Notice I don't have to glue down the edges. Having the edges peel up, that helps facilitate a little bit of that light airy feel that there is to it. Just making sure there's glue in the middle. That also prevents you from getting glue on your edges, so that the glue is there. And now as I'm ready to go, I can glue the pieces down for the birds in there and have those 12 birds flying in different directions. You could have 12 trees on those. I had thought initially about, well, what about if we use some dry brush technique and painted something in here. So I said, well, what about the trees? And so this is what I came up with initially. I said, what if you did something like that and have those pieces in there? And the thing that I discovered is you still have quite a bit of bleeding edges on there, and what I was looking for is a little bit of contrast. Contrast is another tool that we use as an artist and as artists trying to create our artwork, and it's a great tool to utilize in utilizing contrast. So what do I have contrasting? Well, I have a torn edge of the paper towels, right? It has a torn, rough edge that you can kind of see. It's kind of loose, it's kind of moving, and then the paint inside of it as well. That's a torn edge or a loose moving sort of a thing. And so I was thinking, well, but to have the contrast to work the way I want it to in this one, I probably am going to need to have something that has a sharper, cleaner edge. So I thought, what about these birds? They have sharp, clean edges on them. And so that's where I came up with the idea of using the cutout and using the scissors to create the edges of the other item that is within the paper. And so that is going to help us with our contrast. So we have something that's really, really loose and moving, like the edges and the paint application in there. And then we have something that's hard edge, like the cutout forms that we're going to be utilizing to create the overall picture with those. I think that's probably enough information for you guys to get going on this. I'll have this posted. Actually, you'll see it probably before, because it'll be on the opening page of the assignment on that as well. So you'll have a pretty good view of that as we finish out. And so that is what we're going to be doing for our final project. It's a 2-day project. It's due on the 29th, and that's the last day of class. Don't wait till the last day of class to do it, or you're going to find yourself extremely stressed and trying to fit it in. As you can tell, this is going to take a little bit of time to assemble. So keep that in mind as you work through this assignment. Thanks.